Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another Brachiosaurus, another Jurassic World Brachiosaurus. It's quite interesting because we have just recently taken a look at the Nanmu Brachiosaurus. Well, be prepared for a much different sized version of a Jurassic World Brachiosaurus, as today we are going to check out the Takara Tomy version. This is actually a newer Takara Tomy figure. Again, it was released last year. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was with that newer wave of Jurassic World figures, which I have recently reviewed two of, one of which was the Spinosaurus, the other was the Amargasaurus. Well, this is the only other sauropod that they had released last year as far as the Jurassic World line goes, and it is the Brachiosaurus. They have released a Brachiosaurus prior to this, but in my opinion, it is nowhere near as nice as what I'm seeing on this Jurassic World version, so I'm super intrigued to see this one here in hand once I take it out of the packaging. But as far as the artwork goes, you can see that we have a nice image of the Brachiosaurus figure, a nice image of randomly Velociraptor Blue, and then we've also got some images over here showing some of the articulation of the Brachiosaurus. Up here, I actually will go to the side. You can see over here we have another image of the Brachiosaurus and some information I cannot read. On the back, we have an image similar to what we had seen on the front as far as this one goes, but we also have a shot of the head sculpt of the Brachiosaurus, as well as the Takara Tomy logo right there, and the species name as well, kind of hiding there behind the Brachiosaurus. And then over here, another image showing off some of the articulation, and then up here on the top, similar images to what we had just seen on the front of the box. So let's pop this open and check out this new Jurassic World Brachiosaurus from Takara Tomy. And here is our Brachiosaurus, and what a looker. I will say this obviously is nowhere near as nice as the Nanmu version that we've recently reviewed, but as far as a Takara Tomy version goes of a Brachiosaurus sporting a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World type of an appearance, this one is really quite nice. I'm not super sold on the paint application, I will say that. It looks okay for what it is, but I think that the paint application doesn't complement the sculpt, and the sculpt is way better than what we have paint-wise. Like, the sculpt deserves a better paint application than what has been given here thanks to Takara Tomy's figure. But again, even excluding the fact that the paint itself isn't really all that great, and it's not even that it's terrible, there's just, it could have been definitely improved upon. Maybe, again, I'm looking at it through biased eyes after recently reviewing the Nanmu version. That one was just so unbelievably impressive that maybe this one is pretty darn nice, and it's just because now my brain has recently seen the beauty of Nanmu's version that anything else, I guess, just doesn't compete with that. But again, the sculpt, as far as a Takara Tomy figure goes, it looks incredible when it comes to the amount of detail they've included in a figure so small. Like, you can see my hand in here. It's a pretty small Brachiosaurus, and I'm looking here at it, and I can definitely see some extremely impressive skin detail throughout the course of the figure. So let's go ahead, just jump straight to a closer look at it right now, and check this Brachiosaurus out up close. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Brachiosaurus, you can see that it definitely looks pretty nice. You know, it for the most part captures the likeness of a Jurassic World or Jurassic Park Brachiosaurus pretty well, but I wouldn't say it's perfect. I feel like the snout might be a little too pointy, whereas the Brachiosaurus actually has a little bit of a thicker, kind of more rounded snout in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, but again, it still looks pretty good for what it is. There's definitely some sloppiness to the paintwork there from the inside of the mouth. It seems like some of the purple has kind of run out here up onto the snout a little bit, and that doesn't look all that great. But again, as far as like this smaller sized version of a Jurassic World Brachiosaurus goes, it definitely looks pretty darn good for being a Takara Tomy figure. And again, they continuously improve their sculpts. They just have been blowing me away lately with how good their sculpts are. You can also see the nostrils sculpted out up there on the top of the head, as well as the eyes painted quite beautifully. They're painted with a black, and they look to stand out quite nicely. They do have a gloss coat on them, and I do, again, apologize if you see any type of paint on my fingers. I've been painting stuff a lot lately, trying to get things done that I need to get done, so I've continuously had paint on my fingers whenever I'm down here doing reviews, but Again, as far as the sculpt of the head area goes, it looks pretty nice, but once we reach the neck, the sculpt continues to look incredible, but the paintwork I'm not a huge fan of. We do have a very nice dark gray for the majority of like the upper side of the Brachiosaurus, but I feel like the transition there between the dark gray from the back to the side of the neck is incredibly abrupt, not near as smooth as it should be when replicating a Jurassic World style Brachiosaurus, and in fact that darker gray should have run down a little bit further onto the side of the neck, and because of the awkward transition there, I feel like it definitely takes away a lot, actually, as far as the appeal factor of the Brachiosaurus goes, and again, kind of one of the reasons why I feel like the paint application just doesn't do the figure justice. And another area, as we continue to move down, like you can see lots of really nice skin detail and creasing and everything in the sculpt of the Brachiosaurus, but as we move down, once we go from this section to this section, the paint doesn't really match up all that well. Like you can see there's, of course, that trademark Takara Tomy ball joint there in between, but the darker gray just doesn't line up perfectly with this gray right here. And of course, you can turn this to try to make it line up a little bit better, like I would say actually, oh, the whole thing's moving on me now. Right about there is where I would say it would probably line up pretty smoothly, but then if you come over here, now this side doesn't match up perfectly, so you can definitely see that there are some inconsistencies as far as the paintwork goes. But as you move down, I feel like it looks a little better here. It doesn't look quite as abrupt as far as the transition from the dark gray to the lighter coloration there, that kind of off-white or light brown. And it looks okay, but definitely could have been, again, better as far as that transition goes. But you can see that the sculpt is phenomenal. Like, it has some incredible detailing for what I'm used to when it comes to a Takara Tomy figure, and that continues to follow through as you move down the course of the body. Again, the paintwork not so great in the neck region. It looks better, I think, down here on the body. The coloration, the darker gray, just doesn't run down far enough here into the side of the neck, but the skin detail is incredible. Like, probably some of the nicest I've ever seen on a Jurassic Park style Brachiosaurus, and definitely some of the nicest I've ever seen when it comes to Takara Tomy. This newest wave of Jurassic figures, in my opinion, have been the best that they have produced yet, and really have me excited about anything else they'll be producing, maybe for Dominion if they do have the license for that. I'm not entirely sure. But you can see, again, as far as like the spinal column and everything running down the back of the neck goes, it's nicely highlighted in the sculpt. It looks really good. Lots of creasing and wrinkling there in the neck. Again, just tons and tons of skin detail that look really good. As you move down here into the body, you can see that the Brachiosaurus is actually really quite similar to the Nanmu version, is taking a step with one leg and then the other leg is planted. So as far as this leg goes, you can see that the tensing is very, very visible. The entire front half of the Brachiosaurus, again, is being held up by this one leg as it's taking a step forward. So this leg is bearing the weight of the Brachiosaurus, and that's a lot of weight. So of course it would be tensing, and they've shown that off very nicely in the sculpt, as well as the shoulder blade up here at the top of the leg. And then of course running down, you can see the elbow here on the back of the leg, as well as a very nice foot sculpt with some pretty nicely painted nails. Again, we're kind of replicating a Jurassic Park style Brachiosaurus foot sculpt, and I think they did a pretty good job as far as that goes. And the paintwork of the nails is a black and does not look sloppy at all, if you ask me. And then as we move up here, again, you can see that the transitions between colors is much nicer here than it was up on the neck, and it honestly feels like we have like a dark gray for the upper part, but then as we come down here into the side, we kind of have like a light hint of like a purplish gray, and that is kind of the way that the Brachiosaurus looks in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, so they've done a pretty good job of kind of replicating that appearance to the Brachiosaurus, and I feel like the transition between those darker colors down into that lighter, kind of like a tan, is way smoother and way more realistic than what we saw elsewhere. I think the only thing that Takara Tomy figures really need to amp up the realism is a dark wash that would really benefit from that. You can see a lot of, again, skin wrinkles and stuff here in the stomach region, as well as skin stretching here in the back, kind of showing off the movement of the limbs. Lots of creasing and beautiful skin detail here in the stomach region, even running up here into the back. Again, the skin detail is phenomenal as far as this Brachiosaurus goes. You can see the hip bone right there, as well as some nice muscle definition. Both of the rear legs are planted, so of course there's a good bit of weight supported by those legs, so you can see the muscles are tensing quite nicely there. And you can also see the foot sculpt. It looks pretty good. A little weird, I think, for the rear foot, but still decent, I guess. And then we lead out here into the tail. You can see some nice skin stretching there off of the tail, or skin actually wrinkling up more so than stretching. And then you can also see again that the tail has a very nice curve to it with the way it's created here by Takara Tomy. It does have a curve. The tail might be a little long as far as what we usually see on a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World style Brachiosaurus, but the sculpt looks great. And the paintwork, I feel like, looks better out here than what we see up on the neck, but still not picture perfect. But again, detail-wise, it's incredible. And then as far as the head sculpt goes, you can see again, it looks just like the previous side moving down the neck. Of course, the paintwork is again painted the same way as what we had just seen, where we have kind of like abrupt transitions more so than smooth transitions. So I'm not super sold on that, but the sculpt is incredible. And then again, as we come down here, you can see a ton of skin wrinkles right here behind the front leg, as well as again some nice muscle definition displayed in that front leg. The shoulder blade is ridiculously protruding from the skin up there. And you can also see some nice creasing there in the joint of the elbow. The elbow itself is present. And then of course we have some nice detailing down here in the ankle as that foot is lifting up off of the ground. The overall appearance to that front leg looks pretty good. And you can also see the detailing in the stomach region also looks, again, as incredible as I think you're ever going to find from a Takara Tomy figure. And that's actually, not a knock at Takara Tomy. Like, it just is easily the best amount of detailing that I think I've seen on a Takara Tomy figure ever. And honestly, some of the best detail I've ever seen, I think, on a figure of this size. So Takara Tomy actually probably deserves a round of applause for this newest Jurassic World line, because these, again, are definitely the best Takara Tomy figures I've ever seen from them. But you can also see lots of beautiful skin detail in the stomach region. Again, a really smooth transition on this side like we had seen on the previous side as far as the changing color from the upper side to the lower side. You can also see the hip bone, again, elaborated from the skin, the spinal column there running along the back, as well as some beautiful muscle definition, and the kneecap here on the rear leg. Again, the foot sculpt looks a little weird. I just feel like it looks weird because the toes are spread apart. That just looks super awkward and probably not the way a Brachiosaurus's foot would work. But again, it doesn't look terrible. It just doesn't look great either. But up here, again, incredible skin detail as you move out the course of the tail, and it looks really nice, even if the tail is a little bit too long, I think, for what a Jurassic Park Brachiosaurus has. The underside also sports some beautiful detailing, but not quite as impressive as what we see on the upper side, but still quite nice overall. So as far as this figure goes, it's probably my least favorite of the three newer ones I've reviewed, but still a pretty darn nice looking Jurassic World Brachiosaurus. As far as the articulation goes, this one definitely has some pretty good articulation. Being a Brachiosaurus with such a long neck, you're given two different areas of articulation in the neck. So you have one spot up here and one spot down here. So, well, I guess three if you count down here, but that's more of like the body, or I guess you could say the base of the neck. But you've got an area right here, and it can go up, it can go down, it can go back, really. Not too far, but it can do it. And it can also swivel, so you can turn the head any way you would like. Same deal for this area right here. Again, it can go up, can go down, and can also swivel. So you've got some nice movement there. And then again, down here in the base of the body where the neck connects to the body, you also have the ability to push the neck down, very similar to the Mattel Brachiosaurus, as far as the way that that one, articulates in this spot and has kind of like that hump right there. But again, it can go down pretty far, so it can kind of give you the ability to have your Brachiosaurus maybe taking a drink, and it can also go up really high, so you can get that neck up there pretty far. There's no articulation in the legs at all, but there is articulation again in the tail in two different spots, exactly the same style of articulation as what we saw on the upper side, where you can go up and down, and then also swivel and go left and right, technically, I guess you could say, if you have the tail in this spot. So nice articulation. Again, those trademark ball joints that the Takara Tomy line always has isn't everyone's favorite aspect of their models. Some people like it, some people hate it. I don't mind it. I'm not, in love with it, but I definitely feel like the figures would look better without it, but it's something that I'm used to when it comes to a Takara Tomy figure at this point, as that's the way they've always been. As far as a size goes, for a height, you're looking at just under 5.5 inches, or again, just under 14 centimeters. And then for a length, and this of course depends on where you put the neck, because you could put it out like this and have a really nice length, a nice long length, but I don't feel like that's the most comfortable position. So I'd say probably right about there. For a length in that position, you're looking at about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Takara Tomy Brachiosaurus, and you can see that this figure absolutely has a small size, similar to what you usually find on a Takara Tomy figure, although being a sauropod like this, it does have a bit of a larger size than your average Takara Tomy figure. Even with a little slight increase in size over your average Takara Tomy figure, it's still quite small, which honestly makes the detailing aspect even more impressive, I think, because of how small it is. But also, hopefully, these guys here in comparison will help to show you that if you do buy this, you're getting a very nice, smaller-sized Brachiosaurus to include in your collection with an incredibly highly detailed sculpt. And then as far as some Takara Tomy comparisons go, there is the Amargasaurus we've recently reviewed in comparison to the Brachiosaurus, and I specifically wanted to bring these guys here in together to show you the difference in size between sauropods. The Brachiosaurus is obviously much taller than our Amargasaurus. But again, showing you that body mass-wise, they're not too far off. There is the Spinosaurus, which we have also recently reviewed in comparison to the Brachiosaurus. Again, showing off the size difference. Obviously, these are not accurate as far as a size goes, by no means. And then we've also got ourselves the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Rexy figure that has come out from the Takara Tomy line. I feel like that's a pretty popular one, so odds are, if you've been collecting the Jurassic line from Takara Tomy, you'll most likely have the Tyrannosaurus. And then just for fun, here is the Nanmu Brachiosaurus in comparison to the Takara Tomy version. So you can see that there is a huge difference between those. So if you are in the market for a smaller, more compact, pretty highly detailed, but not so great paint job on a Brachiosaurus figure, the Takara Tomy figure is definitely the way to go. But if you are looking for a beautiful, highly detailed version of a Brachiosaurus from Jurassic Park or Jurassic World with an incredible paint job, the Nanmu version is definitely the way to go. But still a pretty fun Brachiosaurus, even though it is extremely small in comparison to the Nanmu one. So this Takara Tomy Brachiosaurus is pretty fun. He's not great. He's definitely not a figure that I can say you absolutely gotta go get, but he's still okay for what he is, and the sculpt is incredibly highly detailed and far better than their previous Brachiosaurus. I do have their previous one somewhere around here, but I don't know where, or else I would display that one with it. I can't really recall where I put that one, but regardless, again, the sculpt is far superior on this one compared to the previous one, and in fact it's probably far superior to most that Takara Tomy has released so far. The sculpt of this is incredible, honestly, when you look at it as far as like the skin detail, the muscles tensing, the skin stretching and folding, and just the overall appearance quite nicely replicating a Jurassic World Brachiosaurus. It's really quite impressive on this figure. The head sculpt, I think, is the only area, as well as the length of the tail, and maybe even the feet on the back legs, because they look a little weird, but those are like the only areas that I feel like don't perfectly replicate a Jurassic World Brachiosaurus, but they basically got the gist of what it looks like down pretty well. The only thing that I think is a pretty decent downside for the figure is the paint job. The paint job is not very good. I think the paint's pretty sloppy. It's not quite as nice and precise as I'm used to when it comes to a Takara Tomy figure. The tones of color used are pretty good, and if it were applied in a more realistic and natural way, it would have looked a lot nicer, but I feel like the abrupt transitions in the neck, it's not that great. There's some sloppiness in the coloration of the mouth, and the paint out onto the tail isn't all that great either. But again, it's not the end of the world, it just could have been better. I think if they would have applied a dark wash, it would have made the figure look better regardless, but the paint applications as far as the transition goes in the neck and the tail definitely needed to be a little bit further down and a little smoother. The figure also does have some pretty fun articulation as far as what you usually get from Takara Tomy. You've got a little extra with this one because of the length of the neck and tail, so that's always a plus. It, of course, does have the ball joints that not everyone likes, so that may be a downside to you. I don't mind it, but definitely not everyone is a big fan of it. Regardless, though, this is now the third of the newer Jurassic World line from Takara Tomy I have reviewed, and definitely another pretty darn fun figure from them, just not as nice as the previous two. But if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on AliExpress, where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link, head on over there and purchase this Brachiosaurus if you are interested, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.